seems to be working okay. So welcome everyone. Welcome to the this workshop that we have ready for you. We decided to name it International Perspectives, the Impact of US Foreign Policy Across the Globe, from Militarization to Forced Migration. And so today we're gonna have voices from various parts of the world and are going to narrate their own experiences. As you know, we like to uplift voices of people who are directly affected by various issues, especially, of course, because we live in this country, we have to look into what are the foreign policies that are affecting communities throughout the world. And so I think, well, I'm gonna introduce myself briefly, although many of you have already heard me probably out there. I'm Roxana Bendezú, I use she, her pronouns, and I work for Pax Christi as the program director, descendant of the Quechua people in the Andes. And I say this because it's really important to understand our own positionality, our own background, our own history. And so everybody has ancestors, everybody has peoples, everybody comes from somewhere. And learning about that is important. And so that's what we're here for, to learn about what are the experiences of folks who are in other places and how they're being affected by various foreign policies that are coming out from here, unfortunately. Obviously, we don't want to just leave it there. There's a lot of good work from amazing folks that also comes out from here. Our own Jean Stogan is here, and she's done so much work for so many years in Latin America and in the US as well. Kathy's also here. Yeah, she's done so much work around here as well. So without further ado, I'm going to let themselves introduce who they are and talk about their own stories. But actually, first of all, we do have a holy person. We chose Father Rutilio Grande, who is a Jesuit. And I want to invite Yesenia Portillo, who has from a family in El Salvador, who's going to tell us more about him.
Okay, hi everyone. I wish I had a quote or something of Father Rutilio Grande to share with y'all, but and maybe Jean could help, but fill in. But Father Rutilio Grande was a Jesuit priest that was killed in 1977 in the lead up to the Civil War in El Salvador, at a time when many priests and many religious leaders were being persecuted and killed for their work in communities in El Salvador. And so, you know, he was an important part of the ecclesial-based communities that really formed a part of people's consciousness raising and understanding that they had a right to live dignified lives. So really talking about what it means to have so much inequality in El Salvador, mass inequality, and helping folks recognize their agency, knowing that that's not how God would want them to live. And he was very, very good friends with Monsignor Romero, now, you know, the Archbishop at the time, and now a saint. And after Father Rutilio Grande was killed, that was a very catalyzing moment for Archbishop Romero to be more vocal in denouncing what was happening in El Salvador, and denouncing the US's role as well. So yeah, and I think right now there's also a process for Father Rutilio Grande to also become a beatification and also become a saint.
Thank you, Yesenia. It's so important to uplift the stories, the work of people who have done so much for our communities. And so I want to share now the space with Carla Garcia, and she's going to introduce herself and talk about her work and her own identity. And yes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Carla Garcia. I live in New York, but I'm part of the Garifuna community and from Honduras. And I'm a member of the Black Fraternal Organization of Honduras. It's the organization that is fighting against everyone, is not only the government, to continue having the right to live in our land. And don't worry, I'm not going to give you hard work trying to understand my English. I'm going to speak in Spanish. And I just want to say in English that I'm glad people have ear to listen what we have to say. Muy buenas tardes, muchísimas gracias nuevamente. Mi nombre es Carla García, yo soy miembro de la Organización Fraternal Negra Hondureña. En este momento ocupo el puesto de coordinación de relaciones internacionales de la OFRANE, vivo en Nueva York. Como muchos sabrán, la comunidad garífuna es una comunidad mixta en cuanto a nuestra sangre. Somos mitad indígena de América y somos mitad africano. Nuestro padre fue robado de nuestra madre tierra África y traído a América y se unió con la mujer indígena arahuaca en la isla de San Vicente, en las Antillas Menores. Y en la isla de San Vicente, la corona inglesa exilió una parte de nuestra comunidad, exilió a nuestros guerreros, a la gente que estaba luchando por mantener el territorio. Como comunidad, nosotros siempre hablamos de que estamos enfrentando un tercer o cuarto exilio. El primer exilio es de África. El segundo exilio es cuando estos guerreros son sacados al perder la guerra contra la colonia inglesa y son llevados a las costas de Honduras. Y nuestro tercer exilio ya tiene más de 20 años en proceso, porque nos están quitando el territorio en Honduras y nos están diciendo que no tenemos derecho a él. Y por ahí comienzan todos estos graves problemas que derivan en algo que tuve la oportunidad, la muy terrible oportunidad de experimentar en mi último viaje a mi país, fue hace 2 semanas. Nuestra comunidad se rompió. Nuestra comunidad tiene un agujero que es muy difícil. Pero ¿quién quiere nuestra tierra? ¿Y para qué la quiere? Creo que muchos de ustedes escucharon lo que pasó con el pueblo indígena de la Mosquitia hondureña, la zona de la UAS, un grupo de personas que en la madrugada se transportaba en una barca, en un barco pequeño, y fueron asesinados desde un helicóptero porque supuestamente fueron confundidos con narcotraficantes. En ese helicóptero habían miembros de la base militar de los Estados Unidos. A este año, la representante Omar, no recuerdo el apellido de Omar, logró identificar que sí, y siempre sí, los militares norteamericanos descargaron sus armas en contra de la comunidad mezquita que iba en esa barca, incluyendo mujeres embarazadas y niños. Posterior a eso hubo otro ejercicio para darles una idea un poco clara de cómo es la situación. Tenemos comunidades a las que no se puede llegar por carretera. Entonces, por la playa, a cierta hora, cuando la marea se ha retirado y la arena es un poco fuerte, los carros pasan por ahí para llevar las personas hacia otra comunidad. Y esta madrugada, hace 6 años, estaba un grupo de personas, incluyendo una mujer que recién acababa de tener un bebé, 13 días de nacido su bebé, y lo iba a llevar a un chequeo médico a donde estaba el centro de salud más cercano. Y había otro ejercicio militar y coincidentemente este grupo de personas garífunas movilizándose en carros en la madrugada fueron también confundidos con narcotraficantes. Y también fueron acribillados en ellos. Un sobrino mío falleció inmediatamente. Y de esas historias tenemos muchísimas. Los narcotraficantes no son identificados por vender droga. Son identificados por ser indígenas o por ser negros. No están traficando, pero son indígenas y son negros. En 2019, asesinaron más de 40 líderes comunitarios garífunas en Honduras, entre ellos mujeres. Y de todo lo que se habló,
Vamos a hacer la interpretación aquí, porque está habiendo un problema de audio y la gente que está en el Zoom no escucha. Entonces usted habla y ella lo interpreta. Y así van cambiando. Yeah, could we ask them that? Or did we ask them?
I did ask them that. I think it is that the speakers are picking up multiple mics in the room from my computer and yours, so that they're overlapping the sound.
But if they mute the main, it should be able
When they choose language, they have the option to,
Okay.
to mute. Sorry, technology sometimes is tricky with languages. It's always a struggle, but we can try to make it happen. Okay. Muting the room did not work, it says.
Okay, so we'll do consecutive.
So we can do consecutive. No es lo ideal, pero
sí, porque realmente
uno pierde el
no
hilo,
me
sí,
funciona.
por eso que tratamos de hacerlo diferente, pero no se puede, ¿no? La gente del Zoom
So
no-
let me try in English.
Ya,
I will try my
ya.
best. So yeah, it will be your hard work and I will appreciate it because it's very difficult for me articulate in Spanish and then give the micro and then come back and what I was saying. So 2019, more than 40 killed. And you know what the police said in all these situations? Oh, they are involved in not good activities, narco traffic. This is, we call it ajuste de cuenta. Somebody was come to them and to request something that they owe to these people, or it's a passional situation. It's exactly what happened when they killed Berta Cáceres. exactly the same situation. So I want to call the spirit of Padre Rutilio, my ancestors, and all these people who already offer their life to save our world, to stay here with us. I want to mention that I practice my spirituality as Garifuna women, and we have to honor all the spirits and the spirituality. No fractions, no spirituality for us is one. And we depends of the spirit of God. God is the one for us and we are part of him. So I want to call, because I feel something like very, it's giving me strength right here. So that's why I want to mention that I call their spirit. So why they need our land? The big narco traffickers from Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, is now here in the United States, the court in New York, waiting for a trial, right? Was the president of Honduras. But the people who was being killed with the excuse that they was narco traffickers, it was my people, the poor people. And the big narco trafficking was in charge of govern the entire country. And guess who was helping him? United States. And this is the big problem that we are facing. You may know about the North Triangle Project. Involves 3 countries, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. From where the immigration is coming from where it started in 2013, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. Why only people from indigenous communities or people who was living near to the sea or near to the rivers is the people who was coming through the board? Because it's the places where the resources are very rich areas that can give to a country more strength to continue surviving. Why they killed Berta Cáceres? She was fighting for the El Rio Hualcarque, for the Hualcarque River. But it's not only because of the Hualcarque River. It's because she was speaking out about the truth. Why they are killing, they are persecuting the people from the Black Fraternal Organization of Honduras, because we are speaking the truth. Because they cannot offer us money to shut our mouth. And we still being persecuted inside of the United States. If you believe, oh, the government will not tolerate that type of activities inside of the United States, because this is what the people do. They will kill me in my country, let me go to the United States. We are persecuted here. We're being persecuted here. Almost 2 years ago, 4 guys from the Garifuna community of Triunfo de la Cruz disappeared from the community. The police went into their houses and removed them from their houses, and we're still looking for them. Nobody knows where they at. What was the problem? Ofrane, like 16 years ago, filed a complaint in a case in the international court, claiming to the government to give back the land to the Garifuna community of Triunfo de la Cruz. Also, we filed a claim for give back the land to the Garifuna community of Punta Piedra. Both cases were seen in 2015 by the International Court, and the Garifuna community won the cases. A month before the disappearance of these 5 guys, the person who gave testimony for the Garifuna community of Punta Piedra disappeared and was found killed by a river 3 days later. In the case of our guys, young men from the Garifuna community of Triunfo de la Cruz, we're still looking for them. But this new government, 2 days ago, made a statement. It's not official, but it's an official person who did it, Mr. Manuel Zelaya Rosales. And he said that the government, the new government of Honduras, must find the truth about this disappearance and the possible death of those kids. We are not talking about their death. Why they do it? What are they doing there? And who is the main person in this disappearance? The president of Patronato is like, I don't know how to translate this. So he was the president of the community, 28 years old guy, very active. When COVID-19 started to beat the world, we as community take actions to protect our people, using our medicines, closing our communities, and trying to share everything that we know to make other people also be away from COVID-19 or get recovered from COVID-19. And this is what Albert Snyder Centeno was doing. And let me know if I'm taking too much time. And one day, the police came in the morning, 4 a.m., and took him, and his father, his family, all the community is still looking for him. Why? Because he was asking the government of Juan Orlando Hernandez to comply with the sentence of the International Court. The same thing happening in Punta Piedra. I don't want to make the story very long, but what was happening in the government of Juan Orlando Hernandez, he was selling the land. And he sold the land in Europe, all our land and all lands in Honduras. So now, he's not the president, and finally, United States found that he was a big narco trafficant. Before him, his brother get a sentence. I think is 30 years plus 2, cadena perpetua, ¿cómo se dice?
Life sentence.
And plus 2 life sentence in New York. How the brother of the president can be a narco trafficant and the president not be investigated for narco trafficking? How the person in charge of business from the US Embassy can go to the place where Honduran government, Honduras is counting the votes for the presidency election and said Juan Orlando Hernandez is the president of Honduras. This is the things that make our people come through the border. But more than that, let me say this. In 2013, the first caravan, nobody called it caravan at that time, coming through the border, in the south border, came from the Garifuna community. People went in our communities, outside of the colleges, outside of the schools, telling to the mothers, come to the United States, bring your child. Because if you just have to enroll your child in the school or at college, at high school, and the government of Obama will protect you and your child. And this is the way that our community is started to move in big numbers to the United States. The first Caravan, 2013, I cannot forget that, was only Garifuna people from my community. And for us, because we speak out about it, it was a way to remove people from the land, to be easy for them to sell the land, to occupy the land. Now we have a big problem in the United States because the immigration came out of everybody's hands. But it started like this. Plus that they use our women as guinea pigs inside of the United States. They put them ankle monitors to check how the ankle monitors works in the people's body. And if you know the story of the ankle monitor is coming from an invention in Harvard to monitor cows. And this is what is happening to my community. So we have involvement of the military forces. We have involvement of the embassy. We have these narco-traffickers running in our communities, running our country. And we have to face a United States government, doesn't matter what political party is, doing nothing for us. Our life is in the hands of the society, and our life is in our hands. What I want to say here is, I expect you to take an action, at least one, telling to the government that you know what is happening, at least this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carla. As you can see, it is a different experience to hear from people directly impacted. I feel like there are a lot of people who call themselves experts on our stories, and they have a lot of numbers, yes, they have a lot of statistics, yes, but the reality is that there are real people who live through these experiences and who also have wisdom and who also have an analysis. They also practice critical thinking, and it is appropriate to uplift them, uplift their voices. And so we also have another person with us, Nina Macapili-Pinlac, who is part of Bayan, and I'm gonna let her introduce herself. Let me just see how the audio will work. Hopefully we'll be okay. But yes, you introduce yourself and tell us your story and tell us about the Philippines. Nina.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
It's because you're muted there, but
Can you hear me?
so unmute you and I'm gonna mute me, okay?
Oh.
I will lose this.
And I can do the.
Go ahead and try it. Let's see
Hi,
how that
can you
goes.
hear me now?
Nina, can you? Are you? Yeah, you're not muted, so.
Is it working?
No,
Oh, okay. People
no,
on
I cannot
hear
hear
me.
you. Okay. Oh, there. Hold on. That's it. There. Oh, there's some feedback there.
Is this now? Is this okay now?
Can everybody hear Nina? Let's try again. Nina?
Hello. Is this
Yes. Yes, this
good?
works.
Okay, great. It's kind of bizarre seeing myself on the on the screen. But hi everyone. Thank you for introducing me. Oh, people are saying, can you hear on Zoom? I think they can.
Yes.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
So far, yes. Yes,
We're
yes.
good.
Okay, great. And is it still okay to present a video?
Yes. Are you able to show the video? from there?
Okay, Yeah, me? Oh, I was wondering if someone could screen share or present the screen for me.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure before I start.
And this is something that you send to,
To Roxana, to you.
yeah, to which one? The email?
Through WhatsApp.
Okay, great.
Okay. I'll just cue, I guess I'll just cue you when it's ready.
All right. We'll make it work. There we go.
Okay. Oh, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so there's
Let me know when to switch.
Okay, and then there's like the Instagram video too. Sorry, technical difficulty.
Technical difficulties, no worries. We're gonna make it work.
Okay, okay. So I sent you an Instagram video that we can show too. But I'll signal. Do you want me to just start or?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. So hi everyone, my name is Nina Macapinbac. I am the Deputy Secretary General of Bayan USA, which is an overseas alliance of Bayan Philippines, or chapter of Bayan Philippines. We are an alliance of over 30 anti-imperialist and progressive Filipino organizations in the US. I'm really grateful to have been invited by Roxana and Pax Christi to speak with you today. I'm also Catholic and have recently returned to the faith with a more integrated perspective on my values and activism. Currently, I'm working to organize Filipino Catholics in Philadelphia. The Philippines has a long history of US interventionism, with having been a US colony and now a neo-colony of the United States. To be here with you today to talk about imperialism and militarism in my home country and ways we can resist together is really divine timing, because Secretary of State Antony Blinken is actually in the Philippines right now to meet with President Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., also known as BBM, who was fraudulently elected as president back in May of this year. So BBM is the son, many of you may know or have lived through this, of the notorious US-backed dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr., who was actually ousted by the Filipino people back in the 80s. So I'd like to show a video from the International Coalition of Human Rights in the Philippines, a network of diverse advocates, which includes many churches and faith leaders that are fighting for human rights in the Philippines. This video is actually addressed to President Biden and Secretary Blinken regarding the US visit to the Philippines today. So I don't know if it's possible to play the video on Instagram.
Okay, and you send it through Instagram, right?
Oh, yes, through the WhatsApp, sorry.
Through WhatsApp. Okay, great. No worries. We'll find it. Okay. We're going to stop it and we're going to share it.
You're sharing it.
You were, oh, it was showing? Okay, great.
Secretary of State Blinken. My name is Brandon Lee, and I'm a Chinese American and a US citizen who was born and raised in San Francisco, California. For 9 I was an environmentalist, human rights volunteer, and community-based journalist, writing to protect the indigenous people against development aggression on their land and livelihood. In response to my advocacy and activism, the Philippine military harassed, intimidated, and threatened myself, and I was under constant surveillance for 5 years. And on August 6th of 2019, they had shot me in front of my own family. I nearly died. I suffered 8 cardiac arrests. And now I'm a quadriplegic. I cannot use my hands or my legs. I'm paralyzed from the chest down. And since that fateful day, my family has been forced to flee our home for safety. And thanks to the US government and many of my friends and supporters who financially contributed for my medical evacuation, I was able to fly back to San Francisco. And we are back in the US, far from the Philippine military. But until now, 3 years after the attempted assassination of my life, there has been no investigation or accountability. And my colleagues back in the Cordillera region in the Philippines continue to be in grave danger. I just learned that Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be meeting with the new Marcos regime on August 6, which marks 3 years since the day that the Philippine military tried to assassinate me. I would like to request for Secretary Blinken to please raise the critical issue of human rights to the new Philippine administration. As you know, in the last 6 years under President Duterte, the Philippine military and police have killed over 30,000 people with impunity. In the first month under Marcos, there have been illegal arrests of activists and indiscriminate killings of activists. A 9-year-old girl was even killed in a military house-to-house search operation. The US-Philippine relations should not only be based on economic and military interests, but most importantly, the respect for human rights, justice, and accountability to its people. Thank you in advance for considering this request. I hope to hear back from you. Hello, President Biden.
Great, thank you for showing that. So you can actually go to the next slide. So Brandon Lee was a staff member of Bayan USA in San Francisco many years ago. He's just one example of human rights defenders who are under attack by the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or the AFP for short. The AFP was actually descended from the Philippine Constabulary, which was established by the US military when the Philippines was a colony of the US. And up to this day, the Armed Forces of the Philippines has been a mercenary force for the US and has been very pro-US. So this picture is actually a picture of the protest outside the presidential palace that happened this morning when Antony Blinken went to meet with Bongbong Marcos. So what does this visit mean? Philippines is a key outpost in the Asia Pacific, especially in the US imperialist aggression against China. Blinken's meeting is happening in the context of rapidly deteriorating relations between China and the US. And after Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan earlier this week, China was outraged and saw the visit as an egregious provocation and an undermining of China's sovereignty, since China claims Taiwan as its own territory, to be claimed even by force. So in retaliation, Beijing cut off all ties with the US, including climate change talks, and launched military exercises off of Taiwan. So this visit to the Philippines, Blinken's visit, was really a way to develop stronger bilateral relations with the Philippines. He called the Philippines a, quote, irreplaceable ally. He reiterated America's support for the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, which says that if either country goes to war, the other will join in its defense. In truth, however, the Mutual Defense Treaty, which is actually on the left banner right here, our demand is to junk it. In truth, it has really been used to justify unlimited US military presence in the Philippines through subsequent agreements, such as the Visiting Forces Agreement, or the VFA, which is also named in the banner, and EDCA, Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. All of these unequal military agreements have enabled the military to undermine Philippine national sovereignty, enact sexual violence against Filipino women, pollute and destroy our environment, and provide funding and training to the Armed Forces of the Philippines despite its horrid human rights record. Part of our call is really to end all unequal treaties with the US as demonstrated in this banner. And you can go to the next slide. So here's another placard saying junk EDCA, which I just mentioned. The left one says US imperialist #1 terrorist. So Blinken's visit and US geopolitical maneuvering to uphold US imperialist interests affirms the Philippines' ongoing status as a neo-colony of the US. The Philippines was bought from Spain. Oh, actually, you can go to the next slide, sorry. The Philippines was bought by the US from Spain at the end of the 19th century when Filipino revolutionaries defeated Spain after a brutal struggle for national liberation. Instead of freeing the Philippines and to save itself from shame, Spain ceded the Philippines along with Puerto Rico and Guam to the US for a mere $20 million, which back then was already not very much money. You can see the cartoon on the right. This is Uncle Sam with little brown brother Philippines on the left, and then Puerto Rico and Cuba on the right. So many American anti-imperialists actually opposed this annexation of the Philippines, including Mark Twain. President William McKinley famously declared his decision to take the Philippines, claiming it came to him in a vision after he prayed to God. He said that the Filipinos were unfit for self-government and it was the US's responsibility to take them all and to educate the Filipinos and uplift and civilize and Christianize them, which is an interesting notion since the Philippines by then was already a majority Catholic country. This is really an example of how imperialism and white supremacy falsely uses religion to justify its own agenda, which in this case was to grow the US empire and gain access to the many resources and trade routes of Asia. US imperialism is also the greatest enabler of the corrupt Marcos political dynasty. Like father, like son, Marcos Sr. and Marcos Jr. were both endorsed by the US. In the 70s, the US government supported the Marcos dictatorship politically, militarily, and financially, while maintaining the largest overseas US military bases in Clark and Subic. In the context of the Vietnam War and the Cold War, the US turned a blind eye to gross human rights violations and rampant corruption in the Philippines in order to pursue its geopolitical and economic interests in the region. Even when Marcos Sr. was overthrown, it was the US that helicoptered the Marcos family to Hawaii. And this year, 2022, is actually the 50-year anniversary of Marcos Sr.'s martial law, which is a much darker 50-year anniversary than Pax Christi USA. I much prefer celebrating Pax Christi USA's 50-year anniversary. Despite a $353 million contempt order on Marcos Jr., which was issued by a court in the US in relation to his family's human rights abuses, despite that, Marcos is being allowed into the country to attend the UN General Assembly in New York and also meet with President Biden. This visit is set to happen in September, very close to the martial law anniversary itself on September 21st, because the UN General Assembly is set to be from the 13th to the 21st of September. And Sara Duterte is also coming to New York as well for the UN proceedings. Sara Duterte is the daughter of the previous dictator, Rodrigo Duterte, who just had his presidential term end. So as Bayan USA, sorry, we can go to the next slide. So as Bayan USA, we are calling on the international community to condemn this visit of Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte, and to join our campaign to pass the Philippine Human Rights Act, which is a bill that will cut military aid to the Philippines. Since 2016, the US has sent over $550 million to the Philippines, despite over 30,000 people being killed under the previous administration. But despite all of these atrocities, this history of brutality, we, the Filipino people, also have a very long history of resistance, which lives on in us today. We successfully resisted the first Marcos, and we can do it again. So we call on you to be in solidarity with the Philippines. And so if you'd like, you can endorse the Philippine Human Rights Act at this link, humanrightsph.org. You can also follow Bayan USA or ICHIRP, or International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines, at the following handles and on Facebook as well. So thank you for listening. Down with the US Marcos regime. Long live international solidarity. Tuloy ang laban. Continue the struggle. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is exactly what we wanted for this session, for y'all to be able to hear that things don't only happen in one place, maybe you heard of it from one place, but it's happening in various places. There we go. Yeah. And so that's what is going to help us connect the dots, to see that this is something that is systemic, that this is organized. And unfortunately, the outcome is a very imperialistic attitude towards the rest of the world. And so we just want to make it really clear and give you all the information for you to know that it's not about just thinking, oh, this is happening here, but understanding that this is a global issue. And realizing that obviously we cannot do everything. Obviously we can't be everywhere, but what we can do is choose a role in our communities according to, you know, our different locations and take action. And so there is another person that is not only an activist from Mexico, and he's gonna introduce himself, but he's also a friend of mine. And he's had a lot of different experiences, and he's gonna tell us about it. Rubén Figueroa.
Bueno, gracias Roxana. Gracias a todas personas que están acá y los que nos están escuchando a través de Zoom. Gracias por la invitación a poder hablar sobre este reto, lo que estamos haciendo en el acompañamiento a las personas migrantes que están siendo desplazadas desde su pueblo, desde sus países de origen.
Thank you everybody for joining. I'm happy to be here and to be able to share what's happening with migrants that are being displaced from their homes.
Es la primera vez que conozco a Carla, que veo a Carla. Ella es, como lo dijo, de Honduras. Es la primera vez, pero justamente a pesar de estar en diferentes latitudes, coincidimos en ese desplazamiento forzado a la que se ven obligadas las personas como tal, con fines de interés de gobierno tanto en Centroamérica como en Estados Unidos.
Although this is the first time that I'm meeting Carla, who, as she said, is from Honduras, and how, despite us being from different latitudes, we share in the experience of forced displacement caused by the interests of both the sending countries and this country.
La tendencia en el mundo es a emigrar hoy día por razones que conocemos, como la pobreza, la violencia, el cambio climático, los narcogobiernos, la migración forzada con el interés de la mano de obra barata como tal.
The global tendency is for people to have to migrate due to poverty, violence, climate change, narco governments, forced migration in order to provide cheap labor.
Nosotros estamos asentados trabajando en una de las rutas más pobladas y más peligrosas del mundo.
We're working in the route that is the most transited and most populated in the world.
Son miles las personas migrantes que transitan en México, procedentes sobre todo de Centroamérica, hoy día sudamericanos y por supuesto que también la migración de Haití, la migración de África y los extracontinentales, como se llaman.
It's thousands of people that are migrating through via Mexico, most of them from Central America and also from South America. And of course, we know from Haiti and Africa, and then what we call the extra continental.
Luego de ser expulsados por la vivencia, por la situación que impera en sus países de origen, como en el caso de Honduras, como lo comentó Carla.
After being expelled from their home countries due to the conditions there, like the conditions that Carla explained.
Las personas migrantes son obligadas a transitar por rutas controladas por el crimen organizado, pero también por la estructura militar que existe hoy día en las rutas y en las fronteras.
The migrant folks that are transiting are forced to transit through routes that are controlled not just by narco trafficking networks, but also from the military that have been set up through the routes and at the borders.
Luego de ser expulsado, los cuerpos de las personas migrantes son utilizados como mercancías.
After being expelled, the bodies of migrants are used as commerce.
Son víctimas de una persecución dirigida sobre todo a la migración pobre y forzada.
They're victims of violence that is directed at migrants that are that forced migrants that experience extreme poverty.
Son víctimas de masacres que nosotros consideramos como genocidios, están totalmente dirigidos hacia la población migrante.
They're victims of massacres that we consider genocide that are completely targeted towards the migrant population.
Están dirigidas para sembrar el terror y para controlar.
They're directed at them in order to sow terror and control.
Se organizan con el interés de militarizar también para controlar.
They're organized with the intent to militarize and control.
Luego de controlar las rutas migratorias,
After controlling the migrant routes,
controlan también el tráfico de personas.
they also control the traffic of persons.
Que les está generando miles de millones de dólares en ganancia.
That's generating billions of dollars for them.
Trafican a las personas que ellos mismos expulsaron.
They traffic the people that they themselves expelled.
Incluso utilizan los recursos de ustedes, sus impuestos, para hacer eso.
And they use your resources, your taxes in order to do this.
El tráfico en la región es institucional.
Human trafficking in the region is institutionalized.
Ellos deciden a quién dejar pasar y a quién no dejar pasar.
They decide who is able to keep going and who is not able to pass.
Los cuerpos son comercializados a pesar de que las personas no cargan un solo peso en la bolsa.
Bodies are commercialized despite the fact that people don't even have a single dime on their person.
Luego de introducirlos en esa vivencia,
After forcing them to experience this,
los que logran llegar
those who are able to arrive
son llevados a punto específico para utilizarlo como mano de obra,
are taken to specific points to be utilized for cheap labor,
incluyendo niños y niñas.
including young children.
En el tráiler donde murieron 53 personas en San Antonio,
In the trailer where 53 people were killed or died in San Antonio,
venían varios niños indígenas de Guatemala
there were many indigenous children from Guatemala.
que eran traficados para venir a trabajar a este país.
They were being trafficked to come work in this country.
Por eso siembran el terror para controlar.
That's why they foment terror, they sow terror to be able to control.
El gobierno tiene que saber que nosotros sabemos,
The government must know that we know,
pero también todos y todas ustedes tienen que saber.
but you all must know that there needs to be awareness.
Cuando se habla de la migración desde Estados Unidos,
When we talk about migration from the US perspective,
se criminaliza a la persona migrante,
the migrant is criminalized,
pero no se ataca las causas.
but the root causes are not attacked.
Ellos originan las causas.
The US originates or creates those root causes.
Ellos controlan la ruta.
They also control the routes, the migration routes,
Ellos controlan mano laboral.
and they also control the cheap labor.
Y ellos también controlan la industria de la deportación.
And they also control the deportation industry.
Y el resultado de todo este control
And the result of all of this control
son también las miles de personas migrantes desaparecidas.
are the thousands of people who disappear on the migration route.
Lo denunciamos.
And we denounce that.
Las personas migrantes desaparecen en rutas y fronteras totalmente militarizadas.
We denounce the people who are disappearing. They disappear along routes that are completely militarized.
Ellos saben
And they know.
dónde están desaparecidos.
They know where people are disappearing.
Es por eso que nosotros también estamos
And that's why we are also,
parte de acompañar todos estos procesos,
aside from accompanying these processes
de documentar,
of documenting,
de denunciar,
of denouncing,
también buscamos a
We're
las
also
personas migrantes desaparecidas.
searching for disappeared migrants.
Porque es el resultado de absolutamente toda la política rapaz
Because it's the result of all that politics.
y es necesario que la voz de las personas víctimas, de las familias de migrantes desaparecidos también se escuche en estas luchas, en estas latitudes.
It's important for the victims, the voices of the victims, the voices of their families be heard in the struggles in these latitudes, in these places.
Las fronteras, sus fronteras, están llenas de cuerpos.
The borders, your borders, are filled with bodies.
Si en el desierto se convirtiera en mar, flotarían miles de cuerpos.
If the desert were to turn into an ocean, thousands of bodies would be floating in there.
Es por eso que nosotros lo calificamos como un genocidio
That's why we qualify it as a genocide
de pueblos desplazados.
of displaced communities.
Somos defensores de derechos humanos. Somos defensores de la vida de las personas. La poca paz que podamos tener, la cedemos, la donamos con la lucha para defender la vida, la dignidad de estas personas, pero también para denunciar.
We are human rights defenders. We are defenders of life. The little bit of peace that we might be able to have, we volunteer it. We give it up in order to denounce what's happening and in order to defend people's lives and dignity,
Con el interés de cambiar el rumbo de la historia.
with the hope and interest of being able to change the route of history.
Hoy día también vivimos esa situación en carne propia,
Today, we also live that situation ourselves.
desde la propia experiencia de haber emigrado forzadamente a la edad de 16 años a este país.
From my own experience of having to forcibly migrate at age 16 to this country,
A pesar de nacer y vivir en una de las zonas petroleras más fuertes en México.
despite having been born and being raised in one of the most oil-rich areas of Mexico,
Condenados a una pobreza extrema.
we were condemned to an extreme poverty.
Nuestras madres nos parieron en medio del petróleo,
Our mothers gave birth in the middle of oil fields,
pero sin derecho absolutamente, ni salud, ni educación, ni nada.
without any rights, no rights to healthcare, no rights to education, nothing.
Esa fue la razón por la cual me vi forzado a emigrar, aún siendo menor de edad.
That's the reason why I was forced to migrate despite being underage.
Retorné a mi país,
I returned to my country.
inicié un proceso de lucha por los que también se vieron obligados a hacer lo mismo que yo.
And I started a process of fighting for the rights of those who were forced to experience the same things I had.
Llevo aproximadamente 15 años de estar en esto.
And I've been working in this for about 15 years.
Hace 2 años mi hermano fue desaparecido.
And 2 years ago, my brother was disappeared.
Hoy lo buscamos.
And we're looking for him now.
Es decir, es un ciclo repetitivo.
So it's a repetitive cycle.
Yo me vi forzado a emigrar como a los que hoy defiendo.
I was forced to migrate similarly to the way those who I now defend were forced to migrate.
Y mi hermano está desaparecido, al igual a los que yo hoy día busco.
And now my brother is also disappeared, similarly to the way that the people who I currently also search for were also disappeared.
Es una realidad que vive en nuestros pueblos.
It's a reality that our communities face.
Lo que hay que saber es que muchas de esas políticas provienen de allá.
And what we need to know is that many of those policies come from here.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias a Rubén por compartir su propia historia. Y a las dos compañeras que también es difícil compartir estas experiencias. Migrar no es fácil.
Thank you, Ruben, for sharing your story, and for the two comrades who also shared. It's difficult to share these stories. Migrating isn't easy.
So whenever you hear migration is beautiful, it's not quite as beautiful as you would think. We also have to recognize that there is migration happens in many different ways with more or less privilege, and that is also something that we have to consider. But the ones who have a little bit more access, a little bit more privilege, I feel like we are called to do more. And I feel we are called to engage others, amazing people like the ones that are taking the time to be here with us, to support each other, to learn, to build, to organize. To me, the most important piece is to study, to reflect. Maybe we want to call it prayer, study, action. It's really, these are really pillars of the struggle. And this is a time for us to do exactly that, to study, to listen, to learn, and to be in community. I want to make time, because we're almost running out of time, for questions from the audience. I know that folks have worked in doing different things in their own communities to support this struggle. So if anybody has a question, I think we have a few minutes left. So let me get the mic to you.
I have a question, but I also have a question for clarification. Mr. Figueroa, did I understand correctly that some of the migrants that are heading north with coyotes paying a bunch of money already have an arrangement where they're going to go work, perhaps in agricultural work or in a meat packing factory or something? They already know where they're going to go before they arrive in the United States.
Muchas veces eso sucede. En efecto, hay un...
Thank you for your question. That does happen sometimes.
Muchas veces eso sucede. Muchas de las personas ya saben a dónde van a ser enviadas para trabajar, como tal vez una esclavitud también que se da ahí, porque los someten. Hemos visto nosotros información, noticias, hemos sabido de víctimas también de esclavitud forzada laboral en ese sentido. Otras veces también estas personas.
Sorry. A lot of times that does happen. People know where they're being sent to essentially be enslaved in a form of like cheap labor. So that's their destiny that awaits for them, and that is well known. So, and they know that they're being sent, they're victims of this forced enslavement through labor.
Muchas personas también que se ven forzadas a emigrar por la violencia. Para ellos es muy difícil transitar por México solos, no pueden hacerlo. Tienen que, luego de recibir amenazas, de huir por su vida, tienen que adquirir una deuda para poder transitar.
Yeah, many times these people who are forced to migrate through the border, who are pushed into that position due to violence, they acquire a debt in order to be able to cross the border. And they're victims of this violence.
So it looks like there's a question from the audience in Zoom. Okay, and the question is, how can we unmask the role of our government in these situations of injustice? ¿Cómo podemos desenmascarar el rol de nuestro gobierno en estas situaciones de injusticia?
Yo comencé hablando de que hay un agujero en el centro de la cultura y de mi comunidad.
I'll start by saying that there is a hole or a wound in the center of my community.
Muchos ya no van a regresar
A lot of them are never gonna go back
porque ellos ya murieron.
because they have died already.
Otros no van a regresar porque continúan en un proceso de cada 2 años en las cortes de los Estados Unidos.
Others will never return because they're in a sort of perpetual process of every 2 years going through a court system in the United States.
Sus casos nunca son resueltos
Their cases are never resolved.
y también es un negocio que se está llevando a cabo en este país.
And it's also a business that's taking place in this country.
Yo trabajo y pago mis impuestos en los Estados Unidos
I work and pay my taxes in the United States.
y me da mucho dolor saber que mis impuestos también están contribuyendo a la destrucción de mi comunidad.
And it hurts me to know that my tax dollars are contributing to the violence of my own community, of my own home country.
¿Qué es lo mejor que puedo hacer ahora como ciudadana americana?
What's the best that I can do as an American citizen now
Hablar y decirlo.
is to speak up and name it.
Hacerle saber al mundo que yo sé que me están utilizando para destruir otras comunidades, incluyendo la mía. Y eso es lo que yo podría decirle a otros que estén interesados. Hablen. No tiene que ser a través de un micrófono. Hay redes sociales, hay cartas que se pueden mandar a nuestros representantes, perdón.
Is to let the world know that I know that I'm being used as a mechanism for this violence, including violence in my own community. And so as part of our work is to speak out about this, and it doesn't have to be through a microphone, but it can be through letters that we send to our Congress people. It can be through phone calls that we make to government officials.
Nuestros ancestros de la comunidad garífuna dicen que cuando el conocimiento es entre todos, las soluciones también son entre todos.
Our ancestors in the Garifuna community have this saying or this teaching that when knowledge is collective, the solutions and the answers will also come collectively.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we also have Nina here, and I'm going to really quickly see spotlight here. And Nina, can you hear us? Let me see. There, can you hear us? Yeah.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me now? Hello? Oh, okay. Yeah, I can hear everyone. I think it just wasn't letting me unmute earlier. Is anyone talking? I'm sorry, I can't hear anything now.
See. Okay, can you hear me? No, now you're on mute. We're gonna get it right, don't worry. Let's see. Ask to unmute.
Okay, hello, yes, I can hear you now.
Great. Is there anything that you would like to add that has to do with migration and with the experience of migration, maybe yourself, your family, that you would like to comment about?
Yeah, sure. I think just in response to the other participants, also thank you for sharing your stories and your people's stories and struggles. I think that for Filipinos, the forced migration doesn't look exactly the same way as in Central America or in Mexico. However, Filipinos do make up one of the largest portions of undocumented Asians in the US because of the lack of jobs, because of the constant militarism and war and displacement in their home country. Many Filipinos do have to leave the Philippines. Under Marcos Sr., there was actually this policy called the labor export policy that basically institutionalized exporting Filipinos as cheap labor around the world. So that's part of the reason why we are one of the largest diasporas in the world. So in that way, I think that I resonate with the stories of displacement because many Filipinos are really pushed out of their home country, not by choice necessarily, but because of these root issues.
Thank you, Nina. As you can see, there's a clear line there. Cheap labor that is linked, of course, with consumerism, and it's linked, of course, with climate change. So this is what we need to consider, that there are root causes. When people tell you, oh, what is one of the root causes of migration, and they will tell you climate change. Well, it's actually not climate change. It's consumerism, capitalism, right? So let's get to that root and address it, because otherwise this is just never going to stop. And let's really challenge narratives that are,
Just only 5 minutes, I'm sorry.
5 minutes, okay.
Sorry.
Challenge narratives that let you think that the approach needs to be one, they would call it, compassionate or like of mercy and whatnot, to try to use our own religious words to convince us, and really make it about justice. Make it an issue of justice. What originated this massive displacement that is happening in this world? And Honoree, I think you have a comment, a question?
Comment. Yeah. Thank you. I'm just going to stand. My name is Honorine. I'm from Rwanda, East Africa. And thank you so much for sharing. It speaks a lot to me. So today, when we listen to the news or in our cycles, we never hear about the presence of US troops in our countries. But you can't just imagine how much military presence is in our countries. Today we have US military bases in 29 29 US military bases in Africa. And talking about Africa, I'm talking about 55 countries. And that's without counting the bases that are under our national force. Let's say I'm from Rwanda and we have a Ministry of Defense. So we don't count that Rwanda has a US military base because it's under our own Rwanda Defense Ministry. And we don't hear that in the news. And because we don't hear that in the news, we don't even question. And I think on the question of unmasking, we are called to scratch beyond the surface. When we hear, oh, in May 2022, there were drone strikes in Somalia. What's beyond that? Somalia isn't just a land of Al-Shabaab. We have people, women, and men like me and you in Somalia. So the drone cannot just target a person or just one place. When they kill who they call Al-Shabaab, who are also people like me and you, they kill civilians as well. And we don't question that. So I think this conversation is important, and it's a reminder that we need to scratch beyond the surface. In the past couple of months, we heard about Ukraine and Russia. It pierced beyond our knowledge of Ukraine and Russia, beyond our geography and history knowledge, because the media made sure that the news came to us, and in the way it wanted it to come to us. But these media never go all the way to DRC to know that the US has always been there. That the person of my age in DRC even never knows because they were born and raised in a climate wars that they don't still understand. And the US is there in DRC. And my own country runs the root DRC. But it is. We have served what we have used as a route for these countries, for the US to attack DRC until today, and it continues. So it's our role here present to scratch beyond the surface, to scratch beyond what we read in the newspapers, in the media, the news that is brought to us to see what else is happening. When we hear the US is donating military cars, vehicles to the UN, what does that mean? Sometimes for us, what we see is they are giving military vehicles to a peace mission that starts with war, not with negotiation and dialogue. I hope we scratch beyond the surface.
Thank you. And Honorine is actually part of the young adults of Pax Christi USA. We're so proud of you. Well, I wanna take a moment to thank the interpreters. Language justice is a critical component of communicating what folks go through. Because them themselves are doing the work. They are active in their communities at different levels, local, regional, national, and they understand their own stories as people who are migrants, children of migrants, and they have a lot to say as well. And we're gonna have hopefully more gatherings like this, and I hope you're able to attend in the future, maybe through Zoom, maybe at one of your communities if you invite us. To talk more about this, because there's so much more to say, and there's so much more to learn, and there's so much more action to take. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Johnny, for recording everything. Thank you, Padre Rutillo, for being with us in spirit. Amen.
If you have interpretation equipment, please